Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we take a dive into the world of health and wellness, where we learn how to overcome adversity, depict fact versus fiction, and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Today, guys, we have a very amazing guest. I am super excited to do this episode. We're going to talk all about medicine. And not only do we just have any doctor, we have like the all-time doctor coming on here. This guy has been on a bunch of different shows, has his own podcast, came out with his own book. We're going to talk about all of that and give you some amazing health tips. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Dr. Kien Vuu. Welcome to the show.
How's it going? It is, you can say Dr. V because Kien Vuu is sometimes hard to pronounce for people. So Dr. V or Kien Vuu, whichever you like.
Both are awesome, man. I am super honored to have you on this show. And I'm saying all these awesome things about you, but people really don't know your life story. So before we really get into anything, I want to talk before you became a doctor. So we're going to go back in time and kind of just tell us, like, I know you went through a lot. So just talk about like those two significant moments in your life and how they helped impact you to become a medical professional.
Yeah, sure. I was born in post-war Vietnam, actually. So, if nobody remembers, the Vietnam War ended in 1975. I was born in 1978. And that's when the communist regime really kind of took over. They took over all the businesses. My parents were Chinese immigrants to Vietnam. They were both pharmacists. And when my mom was pregnant with me, they'd seized all the businesses, taken over all the currency. So my parents didn't think there would be a future for me there. So they had tried to escape in the middle of the night on a boat when my mom was pregnant with me, and they got caught. They got caught, and my dad was thrown into re-education prison while my mom was pregnant with me, and she was actually forced to entertain the communist troops because she was a singer, and I was actually born without my dad, by my side. And shortly after I was born, they tried again. Then they were successful. We had boarded a refugee boat filled with 2,000 other refugees. We were crammed like sardines. And I was the only infant that survived. In fact, I actually had dysentery and I nearly died. We spent 8 months on that boat, docked outside a Philippine refugee camp. We spent another 3 months in a Philippine refugee camp. And then as an early Christmas present, November 1979, we were sponsored over by a Catholic church to Los Angeles. And one would think, hey, as a child growing up, landing in the in the land of American dreams, the city of angels, this child would be very grateful growing up, and that wasn't the case. I mean, I was bullied when I was a kid, and there was a lot of, I grew up in Chinatown, LA. It was a poor immigrant neighborhood, and my and I got tested as highly gifted. So I got bused to a more affluent area of school. And being a poor Asian immigrant kid in a rich kid school was definitely no walk in the park.
I couldn't even imagine.
Right? Chink, get out of here. What's up with the holes in your clothes? What's that stinky food your mom's cooking? Get out of here. Go back to your home country. So I got all of that as a child. And really that, there's a lot of AAPI hate going on right now. So it reiterates, how I was feeling at the time. And I always thought, because of that, I always felt less than, that I needed to do something more, that, I needed to, create something out beyond myself to feel accepted, to feel worthy, to feel like I was enough. And that energy led into, my professional career. I actually wanted to be like an actor or use my voice to do some media when I was a child. And I didn't see any Asian people in entertainment. In fact, and I didn't know any martial arts. And that's the only people I saw doing entertainment back then. And even as I wanted to pursue that, going on into college, my mom said, son, you really have three choices. You can be a doctor, an MD, or a physician.
So I just want to say, no DO in there whatsoever.
I know. I mean, we didn't really know what that was, and so they didn't throw that out there. But mad respect for a lot of DOs. A lot of my good friends are DOs. But yeah, so I started medical school, and then I decided to do radiology, because at the time, because I still had those feelings of not being worthy enough, not good enough, I of course wanted to do something very challenging to prove myself. And at the time, there were really a few specialties that were super competitive. And anyone who's in medicine knows what they call the road to success, ROAD, which is radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesia, and dermatology. And so I chose radiology. And when I did radiology, I couldn't see myself just sitting in front of a room. And for people who don't know what radiology is, those are the doctors that look at x-rays, CT scans, MRIs to diagnose what's going on inside the body. And so I was really good at diagnosing everything, but I missed the patient care. So I did a fellowship in interventional radiology, which is actually doing minimally invasive surgeries, with the X-ray imaging. So I would work on patients with diabetes, with hypertension, with cancer, all sorts of chronic disease, and use all these sophisticated technologies to fix their problem. When really I wasn't really fixing the problem, and here is where my story intersects with how I became doing what I'm doing now. So, once I was practicing for about 5 years or so, I noticed myself becoming, I was always chasing this other thing. Remember, here I was, this kid that always, never thought of myself as anything, and that I needed to succeed more and more to make myself feel worthy. And the thing is, I would succeed. I got the fancy house. I got the Porsche, convertible. I got all those things, but deep down inside, I was still using them to cover that up. In fact, I used the white coat to cover up all that not enoughness. And when you walk around with that energy and all constantly needing that, you're not feeling good, and you really set the stage. If you're not feeling good about yourself, if you're feeling stressed out, well, guess what? You're not going to eat very well. You're not going to sleep very well. You're not going to move. That affects everything. And that energy will lead to poor lifestyle choices. And so 5 years into, becoming attending physician, I was, climbing the ranks. I was the chief of interventional radiology in my hospital. I was going around the world, giving these fancy medical talks, but I was overweight. I was diabetic. I was hypertensive. I was on prescription medications. And I was really, beginning to get early stages of the diseases I was treating.
I want to stop you there for a second,
All
because this kind of goes back to something we talked about in a previous episode, all the way back, I believe it was episode 7, where we actually had a registered nurse on. And most people would perceive that doctors and nurses, they see all of these like diseases, preventable diseases coming in, but yet they're the ones that end up not taking care of themselves, and they're the ones that end up with high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. I think nurses, they have the highest obesity rate at almost every profession. And I know doctors are not that far behind, where it kind of goes to show that the medical professionals we rely on to help take care of us undergo so much stress to take care of us, because they're so busy and put on these like tight schedules that they themselves like can't take care of themselves. So they end up hurting themselves trying to help others.
The culture of becoming a medical student and to becoming a doctor is actually not a healthy path at all. It's super competitive to get in. So you're up late at night trying to study for all these things, super stressed out. And then when you get to, to medical school or whatnot, you're studying, you're cramming for tests. Then you got to, get to the hospital early. You become a resident or an intern. You're spending all your time at the hospital. What do you got at the hospital? Oh yeah, well, some pretty shitty food that you're eating, right? No health food in the hospital. You're not given the training of what it means to be healthy, which is getting good sleep. All the things I talk about in my book, we didn't learn that going through the process. And in fact, you pick up habits that actually build up more stress in yourself. And so it is not, it's very common that a lot of my colleagues are actually very not healthy. There's somebody that's in my hospital that passed away last year, which is a very young oncologist. I mean, he was like, quite obese, and you just don't learn to take care of yourself in that way. So I know that, the world is opening up, and people are starting to understand that, and it will probably take, health advocates to say, hey, you know what? You are more in control of health than you really think. And what doctors can do, what we got trained to do, was actually prescribe this Band-Aid in for the symptom that was caused by your lifestyle actions. But if you can just reverse all that and say, no, I'm going to work on those things, not only do you prevent yourself from getting disease, you become the best, baddest MF version of yourself as you can be. And that's awesome.
So I'm going to ask you my first question, which kind of ties into that a little bit. Have people become, so your patients in general, kind of like use doctors and medicine as a fallback to the point where they don't care anymore? So I know in my field, a lot of people just don't want to come see me. Oh, if I get too overweight and end up with this, there's medicine for it, I'll be fine. Are you seeing that more and more?
I think we're starting to make the turn, but medicine is not what it used to be. I mean, the doctor from what, back in the day is the family friend. You know them very well. You develop this relationship, but we've developed the culture where people, give too much power to their physicians and think that, okay, if something were to happen to me, they can help. And really my message now is, well, they can only help if you live a certain way and you turn your cells against you. But really, you are in control of how your cells behave. You are in control whether your cells, go into the Thrive state, which is what I talk about in my book. All right, you control that. And when you recognize that you are more control there, you can start to be like, okay, if I do happen to run into problems, there are specific type of doctors that might be able to help. But ultimately, it is me that decides whether I get disease or not. And that almost becomes, the disease is almost a choice.
Yeah. And I think this is something I want to start diving into a little bit more, is how can medical professionals help educate their clients? And what can you, I'm going to be honest, from just hearing you now and hearing about it, you're the rarity on the doctor side. I don't know many who really they just tell people, go lose weight. But maybe it's kind of not their fault because they never learned how to properly lose weight. They don't recommend personal trainers at all. They just say, go to the gym. They don't say, well, you should be weightlifting. They just say, oh, just go walk. There's not an understanding. There's a big disconnect between both fields.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get that training in medical school. We learned how the body works, and we learned basically all these symptoms and all these diseases. What we didn't learn is, okay, what were the lifestyle factors that turned on those signals for you to get disease? So one, that's all that lifestyle stuff, which we didn't get training on. We also didn't get training on how do you motivate somebody to make changes in their life. The doctors aren't very good motivators. I mean, if you're a doctor and you're telling somebody to lose weight and you're 350 pounds, it's really hard to motivate them to do the same, right? They didn't have those life type of coaching skills. And for me, when I had my personal transformation, it wasn't the medicine that cured me. It was me finally saying, enough of this. How do I get better? And I did that with a lot of personal development, a lot of life coaching, and that type of deep work. And that was the medicine for me. And I realized that many doctors just aren't equipped with that. So no fault of them. They were only trained a certain way. But for us to be able to reach more people, one, you have to really be able to build rapport with somebody. One, also live the lifestyle that you preach. That's the other thing. And then be able to, look into somebody's life, get leverage in their life. I take people through what I call the hero process, which is hunger, energy, reclamation, and optimization. And the hunger part is, what are you gonna tap into themselves so that they can take the necessary changes, right? And you have to leverage. Usually, it's something that's outside of themselves. You got to say, look, you've got children, you've got parents maybe that rely on you, or you've got a community you need to serve. What's going to get you that leverage for them to take new action to create that life for themselves?
Yeah, and I think this is something where our two fields, if they ever came together, this could be perfect. This is what we do.
Well, teaching
people that leverage.
Coaches, fitness people are all integrated. In fact, I mean, if you really worked on your lifestyle bit, you don't actually need to see the doctor. I mean, and I want, in the end, that the patients end up being the doctors. The patient become their best healers and not the physicians.
I love it, man. And I'm just going to throw an outside the box question that's always been on my mind. And I'm sure you're going to be the one doctor that goes, no, I don't do that. But BMI versus body fat. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but
Sure.
all the time still going to doctors, physicians, they're still checking my BMI and still telling me. I know BMI, for those that do not know, is height over weight. Whereas body fat, you actually have to use some form of either fat pinchers or bioelectrical impedance to get a number to figure out the percentage of fat. Because you could be skinny and still be obese. So I want you to talk about that and figure out how we can help get that into medicine, because a lot of people don't. They just go by BMI. And when I go, my doctors tell me I'm overweight, and I look, I'm not.
So the average person who does not work out, it's a rough estimate as to, and correlate to whether or not people get disease, whether people get diabetes, they're correlated. However, it's just taking your height and weight into account, knowing that muscle weighs a lot more than fat. So if you're a very fit person, you might have a very, large BMI, but metabolically, you're going to be very good, because lean muscle is the most metabolically active organ in your body. So you want a lot of lean muscle. So, I mean, I would be considered overweight, by BMI standards, but that's not the case. My body fat percentage is actually quite low. So that's the difference there. But it is a rough gauge. So if you're looking at somebody and they're not fit, and then you could probably say, okay, yeah, that BMI is probably going to be related, and you could take that into consideration. So it's a very, very rough tool to use, but it does correlate for the average person who doesn't work out, who doesn't take care of their health. It does correlate to health outcomes. But if you are healthy and you've got lean muscle, don't worry about it if your BMI is too tough or high.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit, because it gets a lot of confusion. And same with the opposite. You can, if you're somebody who doesn't work out, who's super skinny, and all your friends are jealous of you no matter what you eat, your BMI actually, I mean, not your BMI, your body fat still might be high. And it's still worth getting checked out by a medical professional, because you could be building something called visceral fat. And you want to talk about what that is for a second?
Yeah, so visceral fat, a lot of people would say, oh, okay, you've got some skinny fat. So you look at somebody, they look, they don't look heavy, and they're not necessarily big, but they do have some bigness right around their belly, right? And so visceral fat is actually not fat underneath your skin, but fat around your organs or your abdominal organs. And that fat is actually quite inflammatory. So if you're not working out, if you're not living that healthy lifestyle, you're thin, but you kind of have a little bit of a pooch, that's that visceral fat. And that fat, again, is inflammatory, that will put you at risk of getting diabetes and other chronic diseases.
Thank you. And now I want to talk about your field, man. So anti-aging, that's you. That's what everyone calls you. You're the anti-aging wizard. That's all the rumors all around.
They call me the anti-aging wizard, but that's fine.
So tell us, what are the secrets for anti-aging, and how does this relate back to what you called actually your Thrive State?
Yeah, great question. So, when I was able to reverse all my conditions, like 5 years ago, again, I was overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, and was on prescription meds. So I worked initially just on the physical components, getting sleep, nutrition, and getting moving. And I noticed that all my conditions reversed quite quickly. And I noticed I was also feeling better. And I was showing up better. I had more energy. So I was thinking, wow, when I cure myself from disease, when I don't get that, I really actually show up a little bit better. So that really kind of got me interested in a rapidly developing field in medicine called anti-aging, longevity, or performance medicine. That's how you actually improve yourself to get better. And that's really looking a little bit deeper into what your physiology is actually doing. Are you missing important things that our body needs? And that's doing additional tests, which might be looking at your microbiome to see if your gut's healthy, because your gut has so much to do with your health. It might be looking at micronutrients in your body, because if you're deficient in certain micronutrients that actually drive your whole metabolism, replacing them will also work wonders. And certainly if your hormone levels are off, the hormone level kind of dictates how your body responds to things. So it's about optimizing those things as well. So those are some of the things that an anti-aging or a regenerative medicine doctor would do.
I love it. And any like tips or tricks for anybody at home? Something simple. So I know one thing you talked about, which I absolutely loved, by the way, was you were talking, it's more than just diet and exercise. And went on and talked about like your happiness in life, the people you hang out with, your community. Can you really expand on that a little bit more for us so people understand that health is more than just diet and exercise?
Oh, sure. If you read any textbook, diet, exercise, and sleep are like the big three. But I talk about in my book this, right? So what determines whether you live a long time? You've got a stellar immune system, which we all need. And we're performing at our best mentally, physically, sexually. How do we want that? If we want that, we need our cells to perform in optimal state, what I call the Thrive State. Now, when the cells are not functioning at their optimal state, if they are suboptimally functioning, well, what happens is the cells all need each other. Imagine if your heart cell is functioning only at 80%. Well, guess what? 80% of the blood, that normally goes to the brain, which, thinks all that stuff, it's not getting there, right? Or, 80% is not going to the kidney, and say the kidney is not getting 80% of its nutrients, it starts to fail. So all these things start to fail. So when systems start to fail because your cells aren't optimal, that's when you start getting chronic disease. So a suboptimal cardiovascular system will give you atherosclerosis, heart attack and stroke. A suboptimal nervous system will give you dementia, such as Alzheimer's, memory loss. Suboptimal immune system will give you autoimmune disease and cancer. So that's the difference between, an optimal state, which I call the Thrive state, or a suboptimal state, or the stress and survive state. Well, how then does, a cell know to go to the Thrive state or the stress state? Well, it's all the energies that the cells are constantly, our cells and our DNA are not fixed. They are listening moment by moment by moment to all the different energies that actually enters the sphere, right? Light is an energy. It comes through our eyes. There's a electrical impulse that then goes down to our brain, and it sends signals and changes up hormones in our body. So every little tiny energy, that we're exposed to is talking to our DNA. Everything from infections to the toxins that are in our environment. So everything counts. But when I did my research, and when I was doing research on this book, there are actually 7 main things that count the most towards whether your cells are in the Thrive state or in the stress state. And the good news is that these 7 things are things that you and I can control.
Well, now we got to go through them.
We must. First is those physical things that you and I just have talked about: is sleep, movement, and nutrition. Then there's stress and emotional control. Because our emotions, anger, fear, anxiety, all that emotion drives negative energy into our cells, thinking that, hey, there's a saber-toothed tiger behind us, and it puts us in an inflammatory state. So we got to know that. We also need to know our thoughts and our mindset, all right? Because we think a negative thought, we're going to feel that negative emotion, which will, again, tell ourselves we're in a danger state.
I want to talk about that once real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but
yeah, you got it.
This is something that literally blew my mind. I'm sure you read about this, but there was a study that did a while back ago that showed that our neurons vibrate at different frequencies based upon whether we're depressed or happy. To like pure emotion, nothing else, everything else, like all the same. Sad, it was a lot slower. Happy, a lot quicker, and just showing the power of emotion and how it plays on our overall health. Just wanted to throw that in there real quick.
That's a great point. See, our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy are all tied together. So you'll notice that, if you're eating like crap and you're not sleeping very well, your thoughts are going to be like, oh shit, the world sucks, F that person for running me over. Whereas you change that physical, your thoughts will start to change, your feelings start to change. Or if you notice that if you elevate your emotions, suddenly physically, oh, hey, I suddenly got more energy. So all those energies are tied together. And the last 2 things on that 7 list was relationships and community. That's an energy. And then finally, purpose. Purpose.
Love that.
Strong energy that our cells respond to. In fact, people in your podcast may or may not know, there's these things in our DNA called telomeres, and they actually protect our DNA from degrading. And stress actually shortens them, which actually, makes your cells live less long. But the longer the telomeres are, the longer your cells live and the longer you live. Well, what is one thing that preserves telomere is that sense of purpose. And they've proven that scientifically as well.
2 points on this. One, I don't remember where exactly in the world was, but it definitely wasn't the US. They found that a certain population of people lived significantly longer than the average person. And it was because they don't keep track of time. I don't remember where this was. I got to look it up. I'll put it in the show notes. But there was this little town where they just don't, time's not a thing. And their average person is 100, 104. Like, that's mind-blowing just to think about itself.
Yeah, if you want to read a book on that, it's called Blue Zones by Dan Beutner. And he goes around, he talks about these countries where people are, they're centenarians living there. Centenarians are people who live past 100 years. And they basically, everything I just talked about, those 7 things are the 7 things that you can control. And those are the 7 things in those communities that are so strong and prevalent.
Yeah, and then the second point, which we talked about the show before, and maybe you can help expand on it a little bit, was the purpose thing, which I love so much, because they were able to show that as we go on and achieve goals, right, it's the act of knowing that we're close that releases a lot of serotonin in our brain, which is a neurotransmitter for happiness, as opposed to actually achieving the goal, which I think is mind-blowing.
Yeah, you always have, the journey is the destination. So here's the thing. I know some people will always say, hey, I'll be happy when I get X, or I'll be happy when I reach X or Y. And you actually get a small hit of dopamine when that happens, but it's a very tiny hit. And so if you're not enjoying yourself to get to that goal and you only get a very tiny hit, well, you lost, my friend. And so the goal really is progress, and to value progress. You got to look at yourself as, I'm going to value progress. And how I start off a lot of my mornings and rituals I do throughout my day is I got to celebrate, because I need to turn on that emotional energy, right? Because I know these positive energies of joy, of excitement, of gratitude are actually anti-aging medicines, very opposite to what fear, anxiety, hate, and resentment do. Joy, connection, gratitude is anti-aging medicine. So, loving life during the process, like you were saying, knowing that it's the process, and improving and evolving. And if you make that the thing that brings you the dopamine and serotonin, then you're living this glorious life, because then you don't have to wait for X to feel what you already know, because we have access to joy, love, gratitude, connection, all those things at every moment. And if we could foster that feeling day to day, then we're really telling ourselves, hey, you're here to thrive, and we're not in a stress and survive state.
I absolutely love it. And I'm going to start wrapping this up. I'm going to ask you one of the last questions I ask everybody is, but I want you to be more specific than most people. So I'm going to specific it around your book, is what's that last bit of inspirational advice that's the take-home message? And I want you to kind of talk about how the book delivers that take-home message that you can leave our listeners.
Oh, it's very simple. The book has one main message, which is you are your best medicine. It's not a doctor. It is you that controls the fate of your cells. And throughout my book, I list those 7 things that you can tap. If the book is not a how-to. It's just a little blueprint, but it demonstrates to you how you can take your life, examine your life into these 7 areas. And if you master these 7 areas, your chances of getting disease is very low. And it's not just not getting disease. You just become who you're meant to become in this world, which is, my belief that everybody is a gift. So I hope that you find that gift and you know that you are your best medicine.
I absolutely love it. And last but not least question, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find their book? Go for it. All you, man.
Thank you. You could actually get, if you don't want to even buy the book, just want to check it out, you can get 3 free chapters sent straight to your inbox if you go to thrivestatebook.com. But hey, if you want to actually get one of these the number one hot Amazon release on longevity, pick it up right now. You could also pick up that book at thrivestatebook.com. You can find me on my website, which is KIENVUU, kienvuu.com. And I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Kien Vuu MD.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kien Vuu. And thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field. And remember, fitness is a journey, not a destination. Until next time.